Yeah, my favorite
All right. Hey,
subject.
Jay Z, here we are again having a chat, which is super good to have you. Jay Z's from John Jack Machado HQ in LA, and he often visits us, and we don't know when he's going to visit again. So we've been chatting online and talking jiu-jitsu and coronavirus and all these interesting things. And I thought today we might pick his brain. So you've been a black belt for how long now, Jay?
Uh, man, I got it in yeah, going on 2013, almost 14 years. I'm going on 14 years.
Yeah, it's a
Long time.
that's a long time. So I reckon you've heard everything, every excuse, every reason that someone may or may not turn up, all the reasons that people might be afraid of jiu-jitsu or not want to do it any longer. What do you reckon's one of the most frequently asked questions you get of people wanting to try jiu-jitsu?
I think the biggest one is obviously they're intimidated by just the close contact. That's a big thing for a lot of people. If people are ready to train, I find they just jump in. But the ones that have apprehension, that's usually the biggest thing. It's like I don't I'm not comfortable with somebody on top of me or close. They look at the positions and they look at the training. And I think what they look at more than anything is the level of stress. And, I always just try to tell them, when you become comfortable, the reason why it's so uncomfortable is because you're not familiar with it, and it can envelop you. But if you allow yourself to explore that and in a safe environment and just kind of allow yourself to be vulnerable and then become comfortable, know you're not going to get hurt, and just know that, hey, from here, all I'm going to experience is growth. And it's interesting because most people that start, I don't, I don't like it to competition, but it's a lot of times the same way when people decide they want to start competing, because we don't force anybody to compete. That has to be something that comes from within. But there was always the same level of apprehension. I'd like to try it, but I'm not sure. What do you think? Those are the two questions that always go hand in hand. And I always tell them, I'm like, I always believe that everybody should compete at least once. I firmly believe that. You have to try it once, even if you're scared out of your mind. Because I tell them, you'll go through all these emotions, but then when you get out there, you're going to realize that really wasn't that bad. And if I didn't win, I feel like I could have won. I want to do it again. And if it wasn't for the fact that they had somebody there to help them take that leap, they would have never done it.
Yeah.
So, you know, we don't sell the art. Anybody walks into John Jacques, there's no sales pitch. Come on the floor. We can't tell you how good jujitsu is. You have to feel it. But
Yeah.
you also approach it. I always use the analogy of a swimming pool. I tell everybody, it's like you have some people that, especially kids, but even adults, they're kind of very timid about it. Some people want to go. Some people jump right in the deep end. Some people want to acclimate to the water. They put their feet in, but they don't really want to go all the way in. And some people just want to sit at the edge of the pool for a while and watch. And like, when I feel comfortable, I'll go in. But what helps any of them is if you have somebody in the water that's like, hey, I'm not going to let you drown. You got to come in here and you got to get wet and you got to explore this, but you have to take that first step. But that has to come from you. I cannot pull you in. And so that's kind of the approach we always take. There's a certain level of ownership I expect the new student to take, because I don't, as the instructor, I don't want to take credit for them training. I want them to know that this was on them. This was their choice, and it's probably going to be the best choice they've ever made. Minus getting buried or
Absolutely.
something.
And I think senior students should take it upon themselves to make those people feel welcome and not just make them submission dummies as well. Like they need to make them feel welcome and realize that resilience takes a lot of time for some people grow into, and that's got to be the whole idea behind it, is to help people to get stronger. So I like seeing that transformation from the people that are scared and shy to being super confident. When someone that's super confident walks in, you're like, oh, this guy's just hooking in. I mean, there's no big deal or challenge to make that guy resilient. Like he's going to have a fairly comfortable journey to being technical. There may be some attitude changes, but it's not going to be that drastic kind of transformation that myself as a coach really enjoy to see. What do you think are some of the tips that you might give some beginners that are feeling a little bit shy or hesitant to help themselves feel comfortable when they train at a new club?
I mean, the first, for me, that it starts with leadership and the culture of your school. I always tell them, you're gonna find people you click with on the jujitsu mat. It's no different than anything else in life. Don't feel like you're obligated to train with everyone, because while everyone is going to be nice to you, when it comes to training, everybody brings a different energy, and chemistry is a big thing, because with training, with live training, the number one thing you have to have is trust, and that can be a difficult thing if you're just starting out. So part of the job of part of my job, and then part of what I expect some of the senior students, is to help gravitate these students towards training partners that they feel comfortable with, that'll help them along, um, because through that's what's going to keep them coming back. If they realize that they're there to learn and not just be somebody's, like you said, like a grappling dummy, um, they'll take in the experience a lot more. So having mentors, doesn't have to be one student, but having a little circle that they can rely on when they get there. At our school, if you're a new student, you know everybody. Within a week or two, you know everyone, because we all acknowledge each other, and that's just how we are. But when it comes to training, and you have big numbers on the floor, it's very hard to manage and find good training partners. So I tell all the students, you're going to have your circle, and you can always explore beyond that. But I want you to have a core group, and that's kind of like you all empower each other. You all go in there and you help each other emotionally. You coach each other. It's hard training. Right? You cannot take that away from the experience. That's one thing. They have to go through the same hardship as everybody else, but they cannot get hurt and they cannot walk out of there feeling defeated. So having mentors and setting them up with a good circle around them is essential.
Yeah, and you have full control over that attitude too, which is something that I tell people, especially the competitors and the fighters. It's like you actually have control over the energy that you take everyone, especially if you're going to be putting them through a hard time. Don't make it miserable for everyone while you're going after them. Control your energy and make sure that you're making it fun. And that doesn't mean you have to use worse technique or that you're not allowed to win. But there's definitely an energy and an attitude that you can bring that can still make that enjoyable for everyone. So that's super important. What are some of the other questions that you reckon you get asked a lot by students at your gym? It doesn't have to be a new student. What do you reckon is one of the top 10 things that students will come ask you about their jiu-jitsu journey?
Some of it is, it's interesting. Like the one I get from time to time is like, am I using too much strength? Am I using too much power? Am I being too rough? Because we have a lot of large students, and they come in, and it's kind of through the technique and through the way we teach. I mean, we stress that strength is important, but it's not the primary driving force behind your technique. So newer students have a tendency, because they're still developing, they use a lot of that strength and a lot of that power. And it's very important that the way we respond to that is not in a negative way, but helping them understand that their development is very organic. Like I usually tell the student, where you are is exactly where you need to be, because you're starting out, You're a physically strong person. You're learning the technique, but it's not polished. So until it becomes polished, you're going to resort to the one thing that you have that becomes natural to you. But the fact that you're cognizant of it, the fact that you're asking me tells me that it's in the back of your mind. That is development right there. It's different than, you'll occasionally have that student that just doesn't care. You can tell them until you're blue in the face, okay, when you get here, you probably don't need to wrench or shove or smash as hard. And they'll acknowledge it, but then they do it again. So for me, the strength question is a big one, and especially because I'm a smaller, I'm not a big guy, and I train with a lot of these beginners, and that's kind of the responsibility of the instructor, is to take this abuse without repercussion. Like, they know they're not going to get hurt with me, and they'll look at me, am I being too this, am I being too that? No, I don't think so, I think you're all right, but it is what it is. And it's just being honest with them, you know.
Yeah, look, it is a common question, and most of those questions hopefully are fixed by communication. I know I definitely do enjoy having, like making sure Matt chats where we talk about submitting people all the time, and be more involved in the catch than the submission, and just making sure that that it's enjoyable. So yeah, but you don't want to tell someone that being strong is bad. So
No,
so
no,
it's an important
you have it.
point, because you
It's
want to
what
encourage
it is.
people to train strength.
The strength is an essential part of jiu-jitsu. I mean, it really is. I have a story of a friend of mine. He's black belt, and but he started his journey on the East Coast, and he was telling me when he did a private lesson with Renzo Gracie, and he was just a beginner, but he pulled Renzo into his guard, and Renzo took his hand and just put it over the guy's mouth and wouldn't remove it. And the guy was like, first he was kind of like, okay, I don't understand what he's doing here. But then when he realized he couldn't breathe, he kept trying to get it away, and he couldn't. And Renzo finally lifted it off, and he said, "My friend, you need to lift some weights. You need to get some functional strength, because that is an essential part of what we do." But it's like I always explain to people, strength is it is absolutely part of jujitsu. But if you develop your technique based on strength, then what you've done is, and I always use the analogy of the DNA. You have broken DNA, and you've interjected strength in there. It works, and it'll serve you. But then what's going to happen? You're going to start to creep up in years. Your body's going to start to slow down. You're going to start to lose a lot of that functional strength and those athletic abilities. Then you're going to start to realize that your technique is a little bit off. And it's because those attributes that you used to rely on for so many years, they're starting to go away. And unfortunately, I see that. I've seen that off and on over the last few years, just training with different people that I've known for a long time. They're still very, very formidable and very good. But certain positions that I felt like they're going to get me, now it's kind of like, oh, no, this is different. I don't feel it like it used to be. And I know that that's a big part of it. That's why I always teach, and especially the last few years, I've really focused more on the jujitsu for longevity. Like, have the strength. Always make sure that that's part of your core. That's to protect yourself. But your technique has to be based on the technique. Has to be based on that first. And the strength is what gets you through the long game in a match.
Yeah, strength. Yeah, conditioning. I don't know when it became cool for jiu-jitsu guys not to do conditioning, or to, like, I do jiu-jitsu so I don't have to run. Like all that kind of
Oh,
stuff. It just kind of seems like a silly thing for somebody to say who's involved in sport, and it's not cool either. Like, it's not cool to not want to look after your body or fill your gas tank, or get stronger. Yeah. Anyway, we got a really good question here from Blair. I'm going to read it out for you. I'm sure you can read it yourself, though. How do you get the most out of rolling with smaller or less advanced training partners?
That's a great question. The two parts, I'll do it. This is really good. Smaller, again, I use some strength. Smaller people, I use pressure, but it's not like a crushing, enveloping pressure. It's not like I'm wrestling somebody bigger than me. I want to encourage movement, just not too much movement. And I don't want to patronize my training partners, so they have to feel resistance in my weight. I want them to carry my weight. But if they're smaller than me, there's a difference between putting your weight on somebody and holding somebody down and literally slamming your weight on somebody because you don't want them to get away from you. I'm sure you've experienced that. You train with somebody a lot bigger than you and you start moving and they literally dive on top of you to keep you from moving. And you can get hurt if the person's a lot bigger than you. So my job when there's if it's somebody smaller is I want them engaging their core the whole time. So I do my best to use some of my weight and some of my strength, but it's a controlled pressure. Everything else is the same. I give them the same level of exertion and technique. That's provided we're the same rank, same skill level. If they're lesser of a lesser skill level, I almost always begin the training by conceding certain elements of the exchange. Either it's a guard pass, or I give them a pin straight off the bat. Something. I always concede something, and I allow myself to get pulled into kind of deep water, and then start working my way out. That way, it it lifts my partner because I want them to feel that their game is developing. And what better feeling if you're a young blue belt to be all over a black belt and having him run for his life? Maybe you get him, maybe you don't. But it's a much more rewarding learning experience as opposed to just you fighting off submission after submission. So I'm always looking to pull the most out of my training partners. And if they're smaller or less rank, my goal is I want to see your arm bars. I want to see your back attacks. I want to see your offense because I want to see where you're developing, where you might be needing more work. And it's a good learning experience for me too, is in terms of how sharp can I make my defense. Because when I train this way, don't kid yourself, I tap. If you give somebody deep enough positions, you're going to get caught. But it is definitely a learning experience for me as much as it is for my partners. But I really want them to have a rewarding experience, and that's just the way I approach my training. I don't speak for everybody else, but for me, that's how I approach it.
Yeah, definitely some good tips there, and I think that's what I love about a whole training and starting in positions as well. Like I mean, because someone might never get on my back, so it's nice to let them start there. And it's great for me to start from bad spots. I really do love that style of training, and for anybody getting ready for competitions, I mean, it's nice to feel good. Tapping everyone in the gym before your competitions, but what you should be doing after every tap is starting from a really, really bad position, even like a bad position with bad grips too, and working out. So you're getting reps in case you get caught in those bad positions, then you've done reps of getting out of those late escapes, and you will get taps. But so what? It doesn't matter. It'll save you for later.
For me, again, I'm just, to give a different perspective for your students, for our students. It's always a great feeling when you're able to pull off a good submission and you control somebody and you apply your technique and you've succeeded. There's always an outlet for that. But honestly, at this point in my life, one of the most rewarding things for me is to go up to one of the black belts and say, throw on a triangle. Now hit 6 minutes, finish me, and let's see where this goes. And I sit in your triangle choke for 6 minutes, or if I can, and try to get out. Explore these positions, get mount on me, have that 220-pound purple belt get mount. Let's see where this goes. Give him, you've got almost everything. I'm not going to give you the full tap, but I want to be in the worst possible positions and see if I can get out. To me, that's like the most rewarding for me anyway. It's like I want to know that I was two steps from hell and I got out, you know. And if I didn't get out, I know where I need to work. And the next partner, I'll have them put me in the same spot, you know. But that to me, that's a long-term game. You know, I think you need to develop your offense first coming up. You definitely need to be practicing and drilling all your submissions. But when you're training with people of a lesser rank, that people that you know you can submit, there's look, I'm never impressed if I see a student submit somebody 8 times in a round, you know. After the first 2 or 3 times, it's pretty evident, you know, who's dominating this session. So I would rather get a couple of submissions in, and it's like, okay, pal, jump on my back, make your hooks, okay, go, and give him a genuine shot at getting me, and it allows me to work on my defense. It's a much more rewarding, experience, and it reinforces that mindset that I have that Jean Jacques has instilled in me that the tap is the most powerful tool you have for training because it helps you learn. You know, it's not about, oh, he got me, he's better than me, or he got me and I lost and my technique's no good. It's no, what are my limits? How far can I go? And training with lesser rank, smaller, you always have opportunities to take that leap, you know. But it's that's the work in progress because it's not easy to get people to follow that path, especially in the beginning.
Yeah, and it can be a great way to break plateaus too, because that's a question that I get asked a lot, where people get they feel the frustration, and you know, like I tell people, this like actually the frustration is one of the beautiful things about jiu-jitsu. It's one of the things that I really like. If I didn't get frustrated by it, I wouldn't want to train the next day all the time. Like, I mean, that frustration is like a little flagpole saying there's growth around the corner. You need to get better to deal with this. And in that moment of overwhelm where you're just like, oh man, I'm not getting better. Well, you know what? Maybe that's going to be the catalyst of you making a decision to either focus better, study better, turn up more, or whatever. That flagpole of frustration is actually one of the best things about jiu-jitsu. I think if you never got frustrated, well, maybe you're doing a different type of jiu-jitsu to me. You know.
Oh yeah, no,
But
for sure. You know, I mean, it's honesty. That's what I tell people. It's, you know, aside from our spouses, jujitsu is the most honest thing you're going to have in your life because it's real and it's authentic and it gives you exactly what you give it back. You know, so if you live in a bubble, if you try to control your training sessions, on every training session, I'm just going to pick the easy training and I want to just make sure I always feel good after every class, you're not being honest with yourself. And then when that honesty finally kind of hits you in the face, I mean, it's not easy, you know, but I find the more you allow yourself to be vulnerable, it's easier to accept that. You know, it's if you're used to being in control, you need jujitsu because jujitsu is going to be the first thing to tell you you're not in control, you know, and you have to be honest about that. And when you can do that, then it just makes the approach a lot more enjoyable because you don't go to training to be stressed out or to be angry. You know, you should go there. It should be the your outlet to help you with life, and that's a big part of it. You know, you're frustrated off the mat. You don't want to be frustrated on the mat. And if you
yeah,
stick
and
with it, you'll get through all those plateaus.
that kind of brings us almost full circle back to the attitude and energy you bring to training as well. Like you can be frustrated without being a dick about it. You know, like you can be frustrated. You can catch yourself. You know, like if you catch yourself banging the mat or swearing in the middle of the training, you need to apologize and you need to take 3 deep breaths and fix your energy back for your training partners in the space. immediately. And we've all been there, and you just need to, like, realize that, hey, you're here for fun to begin with, and it's time to, maybe put yourself in a bad spot now and remember that you're here for fun, because that's my number one tip for longevity. Like, like, how do you stay in jiu-jitsu long enough to get real good? Well, you got to have fun with it.
Yeah,
What would be
yeah, it
your
has to
number
be
one
fun.
tip? What would be your number one tip for longevity? I mean, you and Jean Jacques bring an amazing energy to the rooms, and have a great, really super positive coaching style. What would be your number one tip for students who are looking to do this long term? How do they stay motivated, disciplined, and in good health?
I mean, you hit the nail on the head with the having fun. Yeah, I mean, there has to be a genuine passion for what we do, for the art. Um, I feel like, yeah, I mean, number one, you have to enjoy the art, and then, but have an approach that, because I mean, it's what's always kept me grinding and working, is that, I don't look at validation, tangible validation, rank or accolades or anything like that. I'm just looking to improve a little bit every day. But the thing is, improvements may not be visible to the student, but improvements are always visible to the coaches. You improve every single day you come in. You just don't realize it. One of the stories I love to share, it's kind of a generic story, but it's a story, and I'm sure you've had the same thing. You have that student that comes in and you watch them. They come in the first, month, they're getting submitted, they're getting swept, mounted, the whole thing. But then over time, they start keeping their partners in their guards longer. They start fighting back. They start sweeping, and then it hits you. It's like, Professor J, I'm really struggling. I can never finish the armbar from the mount. Every time I get there, the guy gets out. And I kind of just have this big smile on my face, and I grab them and I hug them, and they look at me like, okay, what's this guy's issue? Why are you so happy? I'm coming to you complaining, and you're happy. I'm like, man, you know, it wasn't that long ago that you were asking me, how do I get out from the mount? It wasn't that long ago that you were asking me, every time I get here, I get armbarred. Now you're fighting back, you're reversing, you're controlling, you're isolating, you're doing jujitsu. The submission, of course, you're going to get that just like everything else. But instead of focusing on what you're not doing, focus on all the small goals you've achieved to this point. But we place such a value on the submission. We place such a value on the reversal. Like somehow is those are the benchmarks of progress. But in reality, coming in every day, you got submitted 5 times on Monday. Tuesday, you come in, you got submitted 3 times. That's progress. Maybe you were always getting choked, and then they go to you and you teach them how to prevent the choke. Now they're getting armbarred. I tell them you won't make the same mistake for very long. You're going to make new mistakes. But remember that the mistakes that you used to make, that's progress. You're adding layers every day. And the important thing is to remember that. You don't always need your coach to tell you that, but have that mindset when you go in. Today, I'm going to be a little bit better than I was yesterday. I may get submitted, I may get this, but I'm going to do something today that I didn't do last time. And that's my progress. That's how I'm going to gauge my development. And before you know it, you're gonna look down and there's gonna be a blue belt or a purple belt around your waist, and you're gonna be like, how did this happen? You know? But you have to have that mindset of, I'm focusing on the positive. I'm not looking at what I can't do, I'm looking at what I am doing. But to do that, you have to be engaging. Don't be afraid to ask questions. It's like, people always say this may be a dumb question. There's no dumb questions. Sometimes the most minute question will make the biggest impact on your game. And it's not about a full broad spectrum of technique. It's simply about, how do I learn how to survive? Once I learn how to survive, that's progress. Then once I'm able to engage, well, now we're playing the game. But if you're at that point, you're clearly developing. The progress will get smaller as you move higher and higher, but you're always getting better. Sometimes you make big jumps and sometimes you plateau, but you just have to keep going. and you mentally will work your way through those because we all hit them. We all hit those plateaus where we kind of feel like nothing's happening. But
Yeah.
you have to have that mindset, and that's also where the coaches come into play, because I always make sure to kind of like, if I see someone kind of struggling, like, how you doing? In a few words, maybe I help them a little bit with something, it gets them right back up and going again.
That's two really important metrics that you just mentioned there that people don't maybe track too. They're too busy tracking, you know, how many sweeps and passes do they get, but survival and control are two really good metrics that will help you get more sweeps and more of the next things, and they have to be respected as well. Like, I mean, that guy that was passing your guard last week real easy, you're complaining to yourself that you can't sweep him the next month, but you're now holding him in guard for longer. That's a really important
That's a
metric. And when you learn to see those metrics, it will ease the frustration a little bit.
Yes, and that's another one. We get that a lot. Like, I'm not able to sweep him. I'm not able to do this. I'm like, yeah, but he is not cutting through your guard like a knife through butter. He used to run right through your guard now, but you've put up so many walls now. You're learning how to control and how to keep him off balance and hold him at bay. That's development. Everything else will progress from there, but look at this as progress, and when you can kind of instill that mindset, then their vision in terms of what's progress really starts to sharpen and it becomes more tangible. When I teach a technique, we have to teach for a broad spectrum of ranks. But when it's a newer student or a brand new student, I tell them, you're going to learn the whole technique tonight, but this is what I want to see you focus on when you're training. I always use the arm bar from the guard as an example. Like, you can practice it and you're going to do it, but it's going to be a while before you actually pull it off. But the one thing you can do, I want you to control the elbow and move your hip out to the side. That's it. I want you to do that 500 times, because the more you do it, the more polished you're going to get. You're going to start to finish the sequence of the technique. But what I don't want you to do is grab the elbow, move your hip, they wrench their arm out, and you go, well, this technique doesn't work. I give up on it. Because that's the wrong approach, the wrong mental approach. I want you to be persistent and relentless with everything that you do, but just know that the progress is going to come in little components. It's never a big component.
Yeah, I love that too. I like the fact that you used arm bars and those things as like little metrics, because like every time I go back and I'm like, I feel like I plateau, I'm like, I'm just going to work some high guard for a bit. And then all of a sudden, you're just working something fundamental and you're like, oh man, there's an Americana from here. This is amazing. And then you've just, like yourself, you've gone, I'm just going to go back to the fundamentals, just going to go back to doing those things, work a flower sweep and an arm bar. And all of a sudden, then you're like, oh man, there's something here. And you went back and revisited it. And then you found something new, and developed something new, sometimes by accident as well, which is fun. So I think people just going back to fundamentals is a great way to discover new things again. Where often we're caught by the new type of guard or the new thing or the completely new skill set that you want, as opposed to going back to the bread and butter stuff. Now, you guys are still on lockdown in LA, unfortunately.
Yes.
But there's little things going on there. Now, it's been a tough time. Again, there's people in Melbourne going through some tough times as well. Um, now, often we talk about martial arts as like building strong resilience, but then when the going gets tough, people display a different type of attitude or whatnot. And I think it's always a good time to put your you're training to test. Like, am I really resilient while my gym gets shut down? It doesn't mean you have to be happy about it, like, I mean, I definitely, when I canceled all my kids and decided that we weren't going to go online, I was like, oh man, I don't know how many of these kids I'll get back. I was like super upset, super upset. And but it was a good time to take some deep breaths and, like, all right, like, you can't be showing, like, the wrong attitude now. You got to pick yourself up, and you got to do something. You got to keep pushing forward. What are some of the lessons that you've found from jiu-jitsu that are helping you through this? And what's your advice to all the martial artists out there in Melbourne, or any cities for that matter around the world, that are still in lockdown?
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up because, I mean, I do it, and I know a lot of martial artists do it. You do it. We connect with inspiration, motivational quotes. I mean, positivity. It's like that's kind of it. You kind of have to have that when you're training, when you're learning, and that never give up mentality. But then sometimes things happen and push comes to shove, and then it's kind of like, okay, well, let's really see if you practice what you preach. And I mean, I tell, because I kind of mentor a lot of our black belts here, and I'm like, whether you're a black belt, whether you're an underbelt, so you want to kind of carry that jujitsu with you the way you approach life. You don't you have a situation, and I'm writing again, and I'm talking about pressure and things like this. And one of the things I say, when you have pressure on you, the first thing you have to do is accept that it's there and calm yourself. Because when you calm yourself and you're centered, then you can focus and you can make the right decisions. If you panic, if you get emotional, those lead to areas that just aren't going to end well. So, as scary as this is, and I'm not trying to minimize it in any capacity, because I've seen people lose schools, I've seen people lose their life work over this, but it's still, the reality is that getting emotional, getting hostile, judgmental, you know, these things aren't going to help your situation. And the way I always look at it is, it's one of those things where, and I'm just in an example, I don't know of anybody like this, but just imagine somebody who's lose their mind. Maybe they have a school and a following, and they just turn on everybody, and they're jealous and angry, and then everything goes back to normal. If you're a student of this person, are you going to look at them the same way when everything goes back and they're like, yeah, never give up, always believe, and no matter what happens, you stand strong? Or are you going to go, well, I actually saw what this guy was like under pressure, and it wasn't anything like I thought. So, I mean, the way I've personally approached it has just been that I really try to live without copying the way or emulating Jean-Jacques too much, but that's his philosophy. I have to apply what I've learned on the mat, off the mat. And a couple of things that I've always tried to do is, number one, not panic, and number two, find the leverage, find the opportunity. There's something that you can do no matter how bad things have gotten. What can I do to elevate myself, improve myself during this situation? You know, in a good, healthy, productive way. Because to sit at home and to just be hostile and complain doesn't accomplish anything. But to take the time to really think, and don't get me wrong, it's not easy. That's why I said about the pressure. It's like, I got to just sit down and think about this. What can I do? What can't I do? And how can I use this whole situation in a way that's going to help me in some capacity and help others? So I'm just doing other things while this lockdown's going on. I still train a little bit in my garage. Like I said, I have some private clients, but I'm just working on other areas, all jujitsu related, but just that I think will help once we're through all of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Whatever I do now, it's to build something that's going to go on after this in life. And I did have moments of self-assessing where I was and what I wanted to achieve. Did I still want to achieve that? Was it still possible? Was my heart still in all of that? Like what was I going to double down on? I think if something is important enough to make you throw a tantrum or shed a tear, then it's important enough for you to start investigating why you're having those reactions to things. you know, it's sort of
I
really solid advice.
I look at it like this. Really simply, to me, this is what jujitsu is. Jujitsu, it's done so much for my life, for everything that I am, that I place such a value on it. That expression, like, what's worth fighting for? Like, are you ready to just, oh, I'm done? And I've seen people do that within our own organization. Students that they're just like, just going to train anymore, and that's fine. That's their approach. It's okay for them. It's not me. It's like, you're going to tell me I can't train anymore, can't teach anymore? No, that's not going to happen. It may not happen right now, but I'll find a way. And until that point comes back, I will do other things to ensure that I'll be able to return to doing what I was born to do, which is this: teaching and training and learning. This is who I am. I'm not going back to web design or corporate America or anything like that. So I'll write this out, reinvent myself as many times as I have to. But the point is, the school's going to be fine, the organization's going to be fine. But even if it wasn't, jujitsu would always be a part of my life, and it's not something that's going away because it just matters that much to me.
Stuff. I might we might finish up there today. But thanks so much for joining us, Jay, and giving us some time again. I always get a lot of value out of having these conversations with you, and I look forward to having another one again with you soon. All my students always enjoy these conversations as
You
well.
got the
So
best
stay
students, man.
safe.
I love your gym and your students. A couple of things I was just going to point out. Of course, um, the girls, they're the best, but I haven't seen Apple. Is Apple still around?
Apple's around. Of course, she's around. She'll love it. She'll love a message. Mum will show her this message, and she'll be stoked to bits. Yeah, she's still around, double legging everyone. She's having a great old time.
There we go. Well, give Zoe and Lily a big hug for me and all the guys and everybody and all the gals. You have a wonderful team, and it'll be nice eventually to get back down there and spend time with you guys. But just be safe.
We'll see. It should happen soon. Fingers crossed.